And the rest of the world, Supersonic's money transfer has got you covered. With the largest payout network in the Gambia, you can now receive your monies anywhere you are, from Kartong to Koina, with less hassle. Yes! You can receive monies from your family and friends in UK, Europe, USA, Canada, Switzerland, and the rest of the world with our safe, secure, fast, and convenient service that offers you the largest selection of payout locations in the Gambia. Supersonic's money transfer. We are currently in 34 African countries and counting, giving you quality money remittance services that are second to none. Visit the Google Play Store or the Apple Store today to download the Supersonics Money Transfer app and enjoy excellent money transfer services only with Supersonics.
jox leen ma seeni noppa ma wax leen xibaar bu neex korite gi ñu digmal si Habib Couture moo nar a génn ak yéen si génn boo xam ne ni amul fenn te kenn du ko génn ak yéen ñëw sa dog ba Habib Couture daf koy dog ba mu baax Habib Couture moo fas yéene ñëw indil leen ñaw yoo xam ne dañ ko teg si yoon dama ne dem leen ngeen seeti Habib Couture mu ñawal leen seen ñawi korite waaye emut si ñawi korite rek Habib Couture yéen ñi nga xam ne nii yéen a ngi amee seen génte seen taka seen xew mbete seen prom night seen reception dress yu touch boo àggee si Habib Couture soxla waatul ngay dem marché parce que Habib Couture day jaay lii nga xam ne nii moom mooy ay piis waaye bàyyit fa daala sanse day mat moo tax Habib Couture indi leen ay poos yu rafet waaye dafa ne ku ñëw ku ne war a taf moo tax mu indi leen taf yu nice ak perle yu toog Habib Couture askan wi la fi nekkal waaye jigéen ñi jeeg ñee jegemaari alaaji yi mag yi ak ndaw yi la fi Habib Couture toogal kon nag daw leen dem seeti Habib Couture ndaxte ku tardé sa julli naxari ku tardé sa xol naxari ndaxte Habib Couture day seddal xol yi jokkoo leen ak Habib Couture si 736 4561 736 4561 mbate ngeen woo ko si 349 2198 349 2198 seeti leen ko foofa sa Talinding si marché bu ndaw bi Habib Couture mu def ak yéen bu baax ak Habib Couture rek sanse yëpp ay feeñ.
We have in our midst the ambassador who will offer us a keynote remarks at this time. So please, may we put our hands together as we invite to the podium the U.S. ambassador to Gambia. Thank you very much, ma'am.
National Assembly members, Your Excellencies, media representatives, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. Good morning, everyone. I am delighted to participate today in the closing event of the Gambia Governance Reform Activity, supported by the U.S. government through the U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID, and its partners. The United States has been proud to partner with the people of the Gambia as this nation strives to strengthen its democracy in the wake of the historic events of 2016. USAID's Gambia Governance Reform Activity, or GGRA, was specifically designed to help the nation transition from authoritarian rule to a truly free society. Over the past 3 years, the U.S. government, through USAID and its partners, the International Republican Institute, and the International Foundation for Electoral Systems, supported the efforts of the Gambian leaders in government and in civil society to move key democratic reforms forward. USAID's GGRA enabled Gambian civil society organizations to fully participate in the constitutional reform process. Despite the rejection of the proposed new constitution, the drafting process was highly inclusive. A wide cross-section of Gambians, including women, people with disabilities, and urban and rural communities participated. The USAID GGRA activity provided technical assistance, including legal advice, to the National Assembly and civil society organizations on major pieces of legislation that have shown the Gambia's commitment to transparency, accountability, participation, and inclusion. These pieces of legislation include the recently passed 2021 Access to Information Bill, the 2021 Elections Amendment Bill, the 2020 Persons with Disabilities Bill, the 2020 Women's Reservation Bill, and the 2019 Anti-Corruption Bill. The passage of these bills is critical to the Gambia's democratic process. The United States will continue to partner with the Gambia in pursuit of a stronger democratic framework. Through the GGRA activity, the U.S. government also partnered with the Independent Electoral Commission in planning and preparing for the 2021-2022 electoral cycle. USAID supported strong citizen participation in and oversight of both the presidential and legislative elections. USAID's GGRA voter education campaigns were conducted in all 7 administrative regions through local market outreach, school and university outreach, and multimedia and social media campaigns. Over 300,000 citizens were reached through voter education efforts. These initiatives played a major role in mobilizing and educating voters in what became an extremely high voter turnout in a presidential election year. GGRA trained the largest citizen observation mission in the Gambia's history for presidential polls. Over 460 short-term observers and 50 long-term observers, all Gambian citizens, created an environment for credible elections to take place. This was also the first election where citizen monitors deployed long-term observers to witness the voter registration process, providing greater transparency. USAID and its partners also responded to the needs presented by COVID-19 across development sectors. GGRA supported the development of electoral safety guidelines for coronavirus, which were adopted by the IEC and posted in all 1,554 polling stations on presidential election day. Finally, through the USAID GGRA program, USAID worked with media organizations to expand the public conversation about governance in the Gambia, a conversation that continues today. GGRA supported over 510 radio programs that raised awareness and gathered citizens' views about the draft constitution, election preparations and reforms, the national budget and audit, and COVID-19 mitigation. The GGRA program worked with print journalists to increase the quantity and quality of reporting on these topics and others, like public spending and natural resource management. Gambians have made tremendous strides in creating a more inclusive, transparent, and accountable society. Today, we look back at the strengths and weaknesses of the GGR activity, not to bemoan the challenges or pat ourselves on the back for the successes, but to plan the way forward. In recent years, we have seen that even in countries where democracy has been well established, like the United States, in such countries, we cannot take democracy for granted anywhere in the world. John Lewis, the US civil rights leader and activist and a congressman, said, democracy is not a state, it is an act. And we have to take action to preserve it. The people of the Gambia have diligently worked and taken the first steps toward a more free, equal, and just society. The United States government remains committed to working in solidarity with the people of the Gambia as you continue on your journey to democracy. Thank you.
Institute, IRI, members of IFS, members of the United Areas of Development, members of civil society, it is indeed my pleasure to be invited to this important forum, which marks the closing of the Gambia Governance Reform Activity project, which was a 3-year project in support of governance in the Gambia. However, I wish it was not closed down. I can also say that the project positively impacted on the government's electoral process in the ongoing electoral cycle 2021-2023. The Commission successfully implemented various major activities during the electoral cycle. This includes the acquisition of voters in 2021, presidential elections in 2021, and national elections in 2022. Interventions from the Gpri project through IFS contributed to these successes. Such interventions mainly targeted voter education and training of electoral personnel. The importance of these two components is well for the relevance and impact of the Gpri project. That is why I said it should not come to a close now. I would have loved it to continue much needed support as the IEC. The need for capacity building, political staff, and more education cannot be overemphasized. The government remains committed to conduct continuous political education and to build capacity of its staff. These are key ingredients in the success of any nation. Ladies and gentlemen, it is regarded as a complex process, requiring the participation of multiple of players. Each of the stakeholders need to regularly and positively contribute his own quota in making elections successful. While the Commission is committed to promoting and conducting free and fair elections, stakeholders are also expected to be aware of their roles and responsibilities in the process. The role of development process is also very crucial as the development process. I am pleased to report that the IEC, during the conduct of this cycle, has enjoyed very fruitful relationship with IEC and IRI. I have supported key initiatives during the conduct of many electoral activities. This has greatly enabled our election personnel to be equipped with vital skills in elections management. IRI has also supported various voter education initiatives over the years. It is also indeed grateful but it's award from IBIS and through USID. I would also like to take this opportunity to express appreciation to all the willing partners for their support as well and to the government of Gambia for helping the process to put this money. I thank you all for your attention. America, the Gambia, Chairman of the Governance Commission, Interim Program Director, International Republican Institute, the representative of IFPS, UN agency, representatives, Chairman of Tango, members of the civil society and the press, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to all of you. It gives me the greatest pleasure to be here today, representing the Deputy Speaker, who would have loved to be here, but is unavoidably absent as he is on a mission outside the jurisdiction of the Gambia. We'll begin by registering our profound appreciation of the National Assembly to the International Republican Institute for their immense support over the years at USAID and the United States Embassy in the Gambia for making available the required funding for the Gambia Governance Reform Activity. It goes without saying that this support has indeed made an impact in our governance infrastructure. Key among the areas are in the legislative strengthening program. There has been a partnership initiated by International Republican Institute between the United States Congress, House of Democracy, a partnership and the National Assembly led to a congressional delegation in 2019 and followed training by congressional staffers and former members of Congress on budgeting and constituent outreach. Training by International Republican Institute for all 58 National Assembly members increased their fulfillment of legislative responsibilities and understanding of media, anti-corruption budgeting, disability rights, strategic communication, bill drafting, and audit review. The International Republican Institute framed the Committee on Defense and Security, Education Committee, Finance and Public Accounts Committee, Public Enterprise Committee, Monitoring of Government Projects, Local Government Committee, Human Rights and Constitutional Matters, and the Tourism, Youth and Sports on standing orders. This bill review, holding hearings, record keeping, citizens engagement, and budgeting. These plans have led to the more effective scrutinization of bills sent from the executive and contributed to breaking the routine robust term practice of legislature. The International Republican Institute, the West Coast region, and Upper River region focuses develop and implement strategic plans leading to the organization of 31 constituency town hall meetings. The International Republican Institute also initiated the creation of the Parliamentary Women Caucus after training on gender-responsive budgeting. A study tour to Ghana led by International Republican Institute for the Standing Committee of Finance and Public Accounts Committee and the Public Enterprise Committee sparked improvement to the National Assembly Standing Committee, including opening committee hearings to the public and revising the budget timeline. The National Assembly Saturday Hour Audio Program, pioneered by the International Republican Institute, created a regular forum for members to update the public on legislative affairs and receive feedback from citizens. There were 3 private member bills that were drafted with International Republican Institute support from International Republican Institute to decriminalize sedition and establish gender quotas and the National Assembly Service Authority. the International Republican Institute for develop a pocket guide for committee members, a training of trainers manual, gender issues reference checklist, and advocacy reference manual for purposes. The above indeed reiterate how much the National Assembly has benefited from the intervention of the International Republican Institute in the Gambia. We are eternally grateful for this support and hope that this legislature will now, from now on, benefit such interventions in a bid to strengthen democracy. Our doors to the National Assembly will remain continually open to partner with work based on mutual respect and understanding. With this, I once again, on behalf of the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, extend gratitude for the support so far extended to look forward to greater collaboration. I thank you all.
So to wrap up this opening ceremony, we have presentation on the highlight of the activities that was conducted in the course of the implementation of this project, the Gpri. So I think it's important we have this overview so that we're able to do a refresher. We've had both the IEC chair and the honorable member enumerate some of the impacts in their work and in their institutions. But I think we will just present, just highlights of what we were able to do and were able to accomplish with this project. And to do this, we have Renee Travis, who is my colleague in IFS, who was able to join us from the US to make this presentation. So please, let's welcome warmly Renee.
Highlights and programmatic successes, and then go over a few of the impact statements of the GGRA program by the numbers that we've pulled from our results. And then I'm going to just spotlight a few areas for potential continued support. So as I mentioned, the GGRA program is implemented by IFAS and IRI through SEPS via funding by USAID. The program began in May of 2019 with a focus on inclusive multi-stakeholder constitutional reform efforts and supporting capacity building strengthening of electoral institutions. The GGRA program then received an extension so that we can continue our work through the 2021-2022 election period. And we provided technical support in areas such as voter education and mobilization, civil society engagement, voter registration, support on election observation, training and capacity building of the IEC, and continuing support for electoral reforms. So there are four key components of the GGRA program. The four components are the constitutional review process is more inclusive due to greater multi-stakeholder engagement. That Gambian stakeholders reach consensus on comprehensive, inclusive regulatory reforms on the electoral process. That support is provided to the IEC to implement strategic and operational plans and electoral reform. And fourth one that was added after the pandemic started, supporting improved public awareness and effective response to COVID-19, which was supported by IRI underneath the GPRA. Support to reform efforts. The GGRA, as the ambassador also noted, the GGRA supported inclusive constitutional reform efforts by engaging with a wide range of stakeholders during the drafting process of the Constitution. And after the rejection of the Constitution, the GGRA continued to provide technical assistance to various key pieces of legislation. One effort that we wanted to spotlight during this presentation was inclusive reform efforts with the Women's Reservation Bill. So under the GGRA project, there was overall an assessment done, a gender assessment, to analyze various women's participation in elections across multiple facets. And underneath the program, IRI worked to develop options for the implementation of the Women's Reservation Bill, which was designed by IRI, which built in support among key election stakeholders leading to this vetting in July 2021. Ultimately, IRI assisted the So Gender platform to draft the bill, which would reserve 14 seats for women and 2 for persons with disabilities in the National Assembly. And you can see my PowerPoint, you see a lovely picture of the CSO Gender platform and their engagements on that. Another thing that we wanted to spotlight regarding the engagement between the National Assembly members and the citizens on constitutional reform. There is a need to increase, for a platform to increase engagement between the National Assembly members and citizens during the ongoing collaborative constitutional review process. In 2020, IRI conducted 51 radio programs across 5 regions, 15 of which were what is called the National Assembly Saturday Hours, NASH programs. And so it's the outreach events, which they streamed virtual town halls with the National Assembly, which took place via Facebook Live.
Windows P.
Of those National Assembly Saturday Hour programs is that there was 37 callers who were directly able to call into those radio programs. And there were, and via the virtual town halls, there was also constructive dialogue that was able to take place in the provisions in the draft constitution. And through these methods, and under the Gpri program, IRI was very successful in making sure that there was a free voter registration period. I have supported capacity building through many facets, including bridge trainings with the commission in critical areas of identified need, including 2 on voter registration across the course of the program, 1 on election-based management, and then also provided executive leadership training to the commission and support on strategic and crisis communication training that was built out after the conduct of the leadership training identified strategic and crisis communication as an area of need. IFAS additionally provided technical assistance to IEC on the development of regulations around timely priority areas, most recently regarding candidate nomination ahead of the presidential election in the fall of 2021. Delving a bit deeper into Spotlight, IFAS's support to the IEC on voter registration. This is something under the Gpri program was able to take place over quite a long period of time, which is one of the true successes of the Gpri program. Under the program in the strategic plan, which IFAS helped develop, voter registration and educating a culture of planning was really part of the Gpri program and part of the support that IFAS provided. After the voter registration was included in the strategic plan, it outlines a series of steps in order to build capacity in this critical area, including an IFAS supported bridge with IEC on voter registration and developed the IEC operational plan on voter registration. One key success that also came out of the operational plan was the development of the voter registration staff training manual. You'll see that there's kind of the image of the cover there on the top right of the screen, and this voter registration staff training manual was developed in coordination with IFAS and was then shared and distributed throughout the Gambia so that there could be an increased level of professionalism during the voter registration process. IFAS also supported the training of at least 678 individuals using voter registration training manual, which was then done before the voter registration process, leading to an increased professionalism among staff process. Moving on to Spotlight, one of the areas of collaboration and something that the chairman kindly mentioned also, and also the ambassador, is voter education efforts that took place around the December 2021 elections. This is an area where IRI and IFAS work to provide complementary support. So IRI conducted voter education campaigns around the 7 administration regions around Gambia, including with 4 partner civil society organizations conducted in local markets and schools and universities, and via both traditional and multimedia and social media campaigns, which reached more than 300,000 citizens. IFAS in turn worked with the IEC to develop inclusive public radio service announcements and also billboard messages, which were put up around the Gambia to make sure that those people who are traditionally marginalized populations, women, youth, with disabilities, could be reached via the voter education messaging in the critical pre-election period to make sure they would come out and vote. And that ultimately reached 650,444 individuals. So just to delve a bit deeper into the inclusive voter education campaigns developed by IFAS in partnership with the IEC, there's traditionally been a lower engagement of traditionally marginalized populations in the elections. And so to combat this, IFAS engaged with local partners to develop data-driven civic voter education messages that were message tested and also approved by the IEC so that these messages could be shared via radio stations, including 4 these 4 PSAs via 3 urban radio stations and 12 community radio stations. We were able to have a really wide impact with these and got very good feedback from partners, so very excited. And I know my colleague, Lamine Mai, who led IPSIS program for many years here in Gambia, wasn't able to be here, so I had to include him in this picture. So that's him on the bottom right in front of one of the billboards for that IPSIS helped produce for the IEC, encouraging people to come out and vote. Moving on to spotlight some of IRI's work with countering dis and misinformation to increase COVID-19 vaccine confidence. As you all know, which is an issue globally, there was a lot of disinformation and misinformation regarding COVID-19 vaccinations. And in Gambia specifically, there was generally an environment of low trust in vaccines and general perceptions that vaccines weren't effective. So IRI worked in partnership with the Sahel Film Academy to reorient Gambians by supporting an education campaign on COVID-19 risk management, which was done in collaboration with the National COVID-19 Risk Management Team at the Ministry of Health. 100 videos were produced, ultimately reaching more than 800,000 individuals to work toward increasing vaccine uptake in Gambia, and that's a little infographic of one of the messages that was shared during that program. Quickly to go into GGRA by the numbers. These numbers aren't fully final, but so far, GGRA has been able to reach over 1 million individuals with voter education campaign between the programming by IPIS and IRI. There were 67 journalists trained in the pre-election period to encourage accurate reporting on elections and combat misinformation, and 500 code of conduct shared on election reporting, 510 radio programs, at least 800,000 citizens interacting with COVID-19 response effort information, 10 CSOs and media institutions trained on advancing respect for freedom of expression and countering mis and disinformation, 748 election officials trained across the course of the program, and 9 large multi-stakeholder consensus building forums that were held. Moving swiftly into the areas of potential Canadian support, these are touching on some of the issues that have just been discussed even in these opening remarks, and we hope to hear more on this topic from you all today as well. We feel that there is a need to revisit the constitutional amendment process and re-engage with key stakeholders, such as National Assembly members and the IEC on this. As you all are very well aware, the local government elections are coming up in 2023, which provides a clear time for testing and moving forward with other programmatic support activities, including increasing women's participation and participation of all marginalized populations, and supporting civil society and continuing assistance to the IEC in priority technical areas and capacity building, so that we can really build on the good work that the GGRA program has done and move forward with providing support to the Gambian stakeholders. So that has been my presentation. Thank you all for your attention.
There has been tremendous successes recorded from the implementation of GGRA, and Madam Ambassador, there are requests. I have seen both the IEC chair and even the majority leader of the National Assembly working passionately for continued support. And I think, like we always say, democracy is a process. So in as much as we continue to support, we continue to consolidate. So this appeal comes not only to us, but it also goes to the embassy. And I see Madam Ambassador nodding her head, which for me is an affirmation that there will be some consideration in this regard. So I want to move to we'll be back here by 11 because there are also panel sessions that will break all of the conversation around what we have done. We'll have expert view, most of the implementers, civil society organizations, from representatives of government agencies who were direct beneficiaries of this program to join us in portraying the impact. And of course, we of IRI in the Gambia office. And it's indeed a pleasure to be in the Gambia, and it's also a pleasure to be with you all on the occasion of this closing out ceremony. Thank you very much. Please, we'll make our way to have group photographs, and then we'll make our way to take the chief. Thank you most sincerely. We have since stopped calling high table because we don't want to create further divisions. So this side of the table, we would want to have Mr. Guy Sowe, the Executive Director of the Institute for Human Rights Development Agency. Are you here with us? Please let's give him a round of applause as he switches to place. I don't know how it works for you, but
It's an honor to chair this very important conversation on supporting the
I'm not sure whether he will remember this, but the first time we crossed paths was when I was in junior school. At St. Teresa's, we had an organization for children promoting education and democracy. And we did a government job from Honorable Fatih Home System was the speaker, and then we invited Honorable Sallah to deliver the topic on that day. I was a child then, and I'm happy that today he's here with me. Thank you, sir. And should I continue with the title of the record? Or should I just change the name to Gay Sowe? Mr. Sowe, that Uncle John has been here for civil society, but also has been very instrumental in the process to draft a new constitution for the country, and this work with IHRBA has continued to pay dividend and across Africa, I would say. And finally, my brother, we studied together at the university, and I'm happy that he's here. And so I'm very happy that we're going to be having a very interesting conversation because we all know that the constitutional review process did not only generate conversation, but it also led to many, sort of conversations about the future of this country. And I'm happy that, with the support and the work that I has been doing, we'll be able to have a conversation around, what lessons can we learn from this process, but also how can we move forward? For me, this is the two questions that I want to ask to all our panelists. And then, like I said, my job is to be very short, just to ask the question and allow them to be the question. Thank you. So I will start with, so we'll have different perspectives. We have a perspective of government, perspective of civil society, perspective of a politician, but also of one person that was also part of the process. And I think that will give us an overall picture of the conversation that we want to have. And so usually with such kind of forum, I don't know where to start, but I will start again from my uncle. Uncle John. What lessons can we learn from the constitutional review process? Yes.
So that we need to have. But let me say, I think there has been a lot of anger, there has been a lot of disappointment when the constitution failed to pass. But looking back, I think I have kept saying that maybe we do not fully understand what democracy is as a nation. Maybe also the dictatorship mindset still plagues us. That because in dictatorship you will say you want this to be done and it is done. But democracy has a lot of negotiations. It has a lot of differing opinions, and I believe what maybe part of the lessons we have learned is how do we continually engage. On the side of civil society, I think we also took it for granted that the constitution is going to pass because everybody, I think, accepted that we needed a new constitution because of the way the first constitution was amended to suit a particular political position or a particular individual. So I think we also felt that every Gambian was going to automatically embrace a new constitution. And once it had to go through a political process, I believe that there should have been more engagement with the politicians, with the differing political views, and take all on board so that we could have maybe some consensus, get to some consensus there. Again, I believe what we have also learned is that civil society can never remain silent when it comes to issues of national discourse. We must engage, and maybe also we have learned that confrontation and threats don't necessarily work, because I know there are times that when at the heat of the moment, we felt that, you could, there was this thing of these are the parliamentarians or National Assembly members that are voting no, but were they right, were they wrong? They were in their right in a sense, because we cannot also say that everything that goes to parliament has to be unanimously accepted. Parliamentarians have a right to debate, they have a right to take positions, rightly so or wrongly so, the masses eventually decide. But again, I think we were at some levels maybe not understanding the process, at some levels maybe not engaging enough, not trying to find out common ground and try to bring everybody on board. Again, but there are positive takeaways, because there has been more consciousness about the Constitution. People have gotten, at least the time the Constitution was being discussed and debated, you will hear people saying, Neguchi Constitution Day, which means that, people started reading that, okay, there's something called the Constitution, there's something that governs us as a people. And I feel it brought some interest in the rules of engagement, as it were, or the rules that govern us as a people. I believe from 2017 to now, we have a more awakened population, a more engaging population, a more politically active population. So these are maybe a few takeaways, I would say, lessons learned. And again, maybe the final one I would say is maybe not a lesson learned, but maybe a reminder that politicians are always politicians. They will always defend political interests. Sometimes maybe at the detriment of national interest. But again, it's how you see it. Because you cannot say a politician doesn't have a right to defend his political interests. We would wish that all politicians look at the national interest, but unfortunately around the world that is not what happens. So how do we continually engage them to look at the bigger picture, to put the interests of the nation first? I think is a discussion that civil society needs to have, the press we need to have in order to continually engage with the political class. Thank you.
Thank you. Was doing both, the positive and also the challenging ones. I wouldn't call it negative, because sometimes from some of these processes we have to learn and also build. And I think this forum today is also about that. How do we learn from the challenges of the past, and also how do we ensure that we, utilize the opportunities that are also coming from such processes. So then from civil society, I would want to jump Hon Halifa Sallah and come to Mr. Song. Is that okay? Yeah. Yes.
The CRC is there, so I can speak on behalf of the CRC. But I just wanted to point out a few things before I maybe talk about lessons learned. I think it's important we realize the threshold when it comes to changing the Constitution is high. It's really, really high. A lot of us really do not appreciate that. In the sense, we're not even talking about amending the Constitution as a document, even any entering clause. 226 makes it clear, 226 of our Constitution, Section 226, that we have to have, of course, there is the first reading, the second reading, and the numbers required for it to get to the final stage, which is the referendum. And if we were to have a referendum, more than 50% of registered voters have to vote, and 75% of those who voted have to vote yes. So I think that really was very deliberate, as in making it high, so that it would be maybe more or less impossible for us to amend any interest clause, or probably the Constitution as a whole. I don't think we realize that, a lot of us did not realize that, and for me that in itself is a lesson learned in the sense, if we knew that we really needed that high threshold to change the constitution, then it was important for all of us, or for most of us, to be on the same page. Unfortunately, we were not, I mean, in fact, I can give an example. After the constitution was rejected, when the state law office too, the rejection of the constitution was or is a Gambian problem. I would have expected for us to revive it, get the political leaders in particular, even if it means for a month, 2 months, let them iron out their differences. If we have, let's say about 6, 7 of the parties on the same page, I'm sure it really wouldn't have been a problem getting the 75% we have in mind or getting the numbers from the National Assembly. But instead of doing that, we decided to go for it. I don't think that was necessary in the sense we had all that it took to really make sure we got everybody on the same page. Of course, I'm not saying asking for help isn't important, but before you go for, seek help, you have to put your house in order. We did not do that. I also think there were really a lot of misconceptions, a lot of personal interest. And for me, the biggest issue, most people did not read the Constitution, the draft, along with the report and the explanatory memorandum. So, in fact, was it just yesterday or was it last week? I saw someone on social media saying the draft constitution would have allowed automatic citizenship to all those born here. The debate for me about secular, not secular, which I don't think was necessary in the sense, you don't need to mention the word secular in the constitution to provide for a secular constitution. So there were really a lot of misconceptions, all because so many of us relied on third-party information. We didn't bother to read to find out what the Constitution itself, provided for. So, lesson learned, I would say, whatever we do, at least it's important to encourage our people to read more, at least to do more. Don't rely on, your neighbor to share distorted information when you have what it takes to read and find out yourself. I think that really was or is still one of our biggest problems in this country. Sometimes I can't help but feel sad when I see some of the rumors spread. The Constitution is coming out to legalize gay marriage. I don't know other, crazy stuff. I don't know. So if we read the report, along with that, all these things, really, all the doubts we have been cleared. I also think our CSOs, we might have left it a bit too late because, as my friend John said, we all assume no matter what happens, we have to have a referendum. Not knowing before we talk about having a referendum, there needed to be a first reading, there needed to be a second reading, and of course we also needed, the National Assembly to support the process, during the second reading. In fact, a lot of us were caught by, very, very surprised. I remember some very good friends of mine, I'll tell, very soon, do you know the Constitution might not even go through the first phase? It was after we started driving home the point that we saw some of us, running around looking for, as in coming up with activities, So the engagement, I think, should have been from the very, very beginning. What we did as the CRC, we have our issues document, raising the issues we thought Gambians needed to talk about. We also went around the country, to consult all those who really wanted to be consulted. And we also invited everyone, including CSOs, to submit, as in send us your views as to what you think we should take out or maybe include in the constitution. Some CSOs submitted, but even for the submissions, it was always about areas that actually concerned them. So there was really, a lot lacking. So I would say, if this process is to be restarted, as CSOs, it's important we get engaged from the get-go. And I also think we should encourage, like I said earlier, our people to read more. And I also want to emphasize now that there is no way we will ever have a constitution in our lifetime if our political leaders are not on the same page, because it has to go through the National Assembly before we even think about voting. And we know majority of National Assembly members voted in support. All it took was a minority. That hasn't changed because that is what the Constitution provided for. So it's important we're all on the same page, because if we're not on the same page, the numbers we will never have at the level of the National Assembly, or even if the Constitution goes through the first, second reading, if we are to vote, all it takes is for, 25.1% to say no, for all our efforts to go in vain. So important we are on the same page on this issue. Of course, I don't expect all of us to agree. I mean, I was one of the drafters, and I can tell you maybe more than a dozen provisions I don't like. If I were to draft Section 69, I would just say discrimination is outlawed. I wouldn't put any exception. I mean, I wouldn't make it subject to personal law. But I wasn't making a constitution for me. So it's about give and take. You cannot have a perfect constitution. You cannot have a constitution that covers everything you need. So I think it's important we realize that it's give and take. At the end of the day, it's about what is important to you and what is important to your neighbor. If you think those are captured, I think some trivial things you can let go. So no way we will see a new constitution. Like I said, if we continue to be selfish, I'm sorry if that comes across as too harsh. But we need to have the interests of this country at heart. Forget about our personal gains, our personal interests. I think it's only that we can see in Gambia. Thank you.
Because I think at the at the final stage, we understand that our process, as much as it was more legal, it was equally political, and the political was very important. But in terms of your presentation, you also highlighted how that process, we could not factor those important elements that were to put major challenge in the entire process. Of course, we know that the CRC was a government agenda. It was was part of the national development agenda. It was part of it was part of deliberate efforts for this government to move from the past into a new future called New Gambia. And now we want to move to government, to look at the government perspective in terms of what lessons have they learned, and they feel like they have achieved most of the things that they wanted to achieve, particularly with regards to the constitutional review process.
As you pointed out, this is a government process indeed. Expectations were high after the change of leadership in the elections of 2016. And as part of the reform processes, the CRC was established, of course, with other commissions. And what we all anticipated was that we are going to bring about a new constitution, so that, as it was already said in the former constitution, to take care of the ills of the past. But it appears as if the ills of the past have been carried forward by the failure of the passing of the draft constitution. In any event, we should not be constrained. We should not be discouraged. We should not relax. we need to step up efforts to pursue the process with, in fact, more vigor, with more enthusiasm. Indeed, as I said, it is disappointing to some extent, given that so much human resources as well as financial resources were directed towards that process, only for it to come at the stage at which it failed to fail the way it failed. I for one, was part of course, some meetings wherein the draft constitution was tabled, and we looked at it from clause by clause, provision by provision, with a view to adding our thoughts to enhance the constitution. But as from my own point of view, I feel the process to some extent was done in piecemeal. We have to understand our country. Majority of the people for whom this constitution is meant for are not educated, like you and I. Like Mr. So said, most people did not read, even the educated people did not read the constitution, and we are merely trading on rumors. You hear something being said somewhere, you just speak it, and you add some flavor to it, and you make things so unpleasant before the common people. So what are you trying to send out? That is, this constitution is going to fail. But I believe the negotiation process, in my view, should have been further enforced at the time when the draft constitution was done between the political parties. There should have been stronger negotiation, especially on those provisions we are found to be problematic. Because even during our own review processes, we could not agree on some of these provisions. And that it was important that we put aside our personal interests and look at the general good, so that we negotiate very well to avoid a situation where a minority will undo the entire process. So I believe that was one thing that was lacking. I also remember during the process to draft the previous constitution, the approach to some of the elements, some of the things that were done during that time, I did not see them happen that way during this particular process, especially the radio talk shows. Even though we have social media and the CRC sent our teams to go and meet people in their respective locations and dialogue with them, I believe the radio talk shows have also been vigorously pursued. I remember in those days when they used to listen to Mr. Halifa Sallah on the draft constitution, and it made a lot of good so that people understood the constitution. In this particular process, they are there, but not vigorous as far as I am concerned. And I believe that would have been a very good avenue to help the local people. We have our community radio stations, to have the CRC on board, to have the civil society on board, and many others, to have the political parties on board to dialogue. But it's as if everybody was looking at your interests. And as someone rightly said, politicians, well, they look at their interests. They wouldn't mind whether this constitution is there for the general good. But if they feel that a particular section of the constitution is going to, elbow them out politically, and they know that they have the means somewhere to, to stand against that, I think they will use that. And this is what happened at the National Assembly, where the constitution could not pass. So I have a feeling that the process should not be thrown into the gutters. I did not agree with my lecturer when he said that the CRC is dead. I wouldn't say it's dead. I think it's taken enough, and we can revive it. I want to believe, and if that's the case, I think we can bring it back with proper dialogue between the political parties, so that at least we are able to convince people that this constitution needs to pass. because we just cannot throw all of these things into the gutters. We also made mention of outsourcing, bringing in foreign nationals to help in the process. I agree with him indeed, but maybe the government or the authority is neutrality to bring in a neutral party to go and help in the process. In any event, what we need to consider is the intention. The intention was simply to ensure that we revive the process and fine-tune the constitution to the extent that all political parties, all interest groups will see themselves in the process. That is my take for the time being. Until we hear from Mr. Seth again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Honorable Sallah, you have not only been, part of this process of, reviving this country, but you are also part of the 1997 process of establishing a constitution. So you have all historical memory of, the transformation of this country. We want to hear from you, the lessons that you have learned, from this very recent process. Thank you.
After the Gambian people have indicated my worth by giving me 30,000, I don't know how many votes, I felt that I must take a new terrain, a new approach in communicating with the population. This issue I have already put on paper to look at the facts, fears, the myths and reality of the constitutional review process. And I really did not want to divulge what is already a brainchild of my mind. But we cannot continue to be selfish. When duty calls, we must respond. The issue is not about politicians and the misconceptions of Parliament need to be interrogated. Parliament is not about politicians, it's about legislatures. These legislators, pardon me, have a function, and they have to develop expertise in what they do. There is judicial jurisprudence, but there is also legislative jurisprudence. And unless you help parliamentarians to understand that once they enter the parliament, their political mindset must disappear, and they must now see themselves as lawmakers of the land. You have lawyers in court. That's a function. They have their procedures. When you are a lawmaker, that's a function. It has procedures. And in the constitutional review exercise, they focus on the jurist rather than also the legislature. The legislature has a function. And what should have been done from the very beginning was a knowledge-based consultation, and then the opinionated consultation. Opinion-based is one thing, knowledge-based is another thing. When the bill was brought to the National Assembly, I reviewed it, and I told them that to amend a constitution is possible if it is a clause that's not entrenched. We, the National Assembly members, could do it. First publication, second publication, within 3 months, 10 days, brought before the National Assembly, first reading, then the second reading, 3/4 majority, third reading, 3/4 majority, you pass it, and it goes to the president for his assent, and the provision is changed. And they did it by changing the 65 years. So the issue was, could we not look at the whole constitution, all the areas which could be changed by the National Assembly members? We change it. Within 6 months, we would have changed all those provisions. And then the intent clause was required for application for 3 months, 10 days, brought it before the National Assembly, but it says you cannot pass it unless it goes to a referendum. It will not be assented until it goes to a referendum. Then it means that those clauses that were not entrenched, would have gone through the process with a referendum. Within 6 months, the IEC will subject that bill to a referendum, and within a year, you can have the whole changed constitution. But maybe we do not need to take all that track, because under Section 226, what is missing there is that wholesale change of a constitution. But it's an entrenched clause. Maybe we should have started there by changing that very clause to a referendum to ensure that you can have a wholesale change of a constitution. But there was no conversation. When I mention this in the national, it's like somebody is just trying to show the knowledge is obstructing. It was ignored. And we passed it. It became an act. It's no longer an act of the executive. Once it is passed by the National Assembly, it's a joint responsibility of the Assembly and the executive. So the act was passed by the National Assembly. We, the National Assembly members, collective responsibility, assigned the executive to implement. Section 4 says that there is composition. The chairman must be designated by the Chief Justice, not even nominated or selected by the President. It's designated by the Chief Justice. The National Assembly passed that. The Deputy Chair by the Minister of Justice. The National Assembly could have said, well, we will subject that appointment to some form of National Assembly review. We could have injected in the bill, but it was not done. It is said that the Minister of Justice will nominate the Vice Chair. And then the 9 other members, if I remember something right, I can look at the bill, will be nominated by the President. This was done. Now look at Section 6, what it says. Because here, I will be brief, because we are dealing with 3 fundamental pillars. Context of the review process, the process itself of the review exercise, and the outcome. The context is clear. We brought about the change. We had a president who was an independent candidate and ultimately assumed responsibility as head of state. He did not have anybody in that National Assembly whom he could rely on to say, is my party National Assembly member. Gambia had the best chance of having a legislature which will put partisan issues behind it. Because we did not have a ruling party, which in many jurisdictions you acclaim to democracy. This is the greatest disruption of the democratic order. Look at them, they fight each other in parliament, they insult each other in parliament. It's not an example of what a legislature should be. It's an organ of the people to make laws for Congress. So in short, the process that the laws put in place was that in carrying out the functions under this subsection, the Commission shall seek public opinion and take into account such proposals as it considers appropriate. There is a discretionary power. Take opinion, but you must be discerning what opinion is appropriate. That is the role of the Commission to conduct, to determine. Review the 1997 Constitution. Most people say the 1990 Constitution was a soldier's constitution. What is a soldier's constitution? Yeah, that is your constitution now. We brought about the change through that constitution. The change itself of that soldier, we brought about through the constitution itself. When he refused to go, what did I say? That there is constitutional legitimacy, there's electoral legitimacy. He had no legitimacy, he must go. And a deadline was put because that's a constitutional provision. And the date was mentioned on the 19th. He must go. Why? Because that is what the Constitution says. So if we did our work right, we should have subjected to that 1997 Constitution into review, clause by clause, in public, so that we can interrogate the past, understand what really happened, and all the myths, all the fabrications that people were making because of political interest will disappear. Then we'll know the value of the 1997 Constitution. What was good there, what was bad there, what was added there. That's what was required. But sentiments were rife. We were not people who will come back into the plane because we did that in 1997. What did we get? Insults and all sorts of comments of misleading a nation to accept a soldier's constitution. An intellectual must be discerning. You must come to a point where you become dispassionate and you look at issues concretely in the interest of the people, not in your personal interest. So, looking at this, that we should adhere to national values and ethos, safeguard and promote the following matters: the existence of the Gambia as a sovereign independent state, the Gambia Republican system of governance, including its democratic values and respect for and promotion of the rule of law and fundamental rights and freedom, the separation of powers, national unity, cohesion, and peace, the importance of using periodic democratic elections, ensuring periodic democratic elections based on universal adult suffrage, including the introduction of term limits for serving in the office of the president. Sorry? Yes, those are some of the functions. So we see the area where it talks about what they call secularism. What it says, the Gambia continues existence as a secular state. And it defines what a secular state is. It said, in which all faiths are treated equally and encouraged to foster national cohesion and unity. That is what is put there. Why did this bring about the division that it did? Faith groups attacking each other. 1965 Constitution is a secular constitution. 1970 Constitution is a secular constitution, meaning that it's not a constitution based on a religion, a state religion. You look at the 1965 Constitution, it's even saying Her Majesty constitute this and that and that and that. How can that be a religious-based constitution? So it's the same process taking place. And the issue of faith. If you look at don't we have matrimonial bills for matrimonial laws for the Christian, matrimonial laws for the Muslim? Why should that really bring about any issue? My brother here is talking about the personal law. What is wrong with personal laws? What is important is the equity. If a Christian believes that something about marriage should now feature at the constitutional level, make the recommendation so that it is elevated at that level to protect your group rights. There are group rights. And our type of society, in order to maintain cohesion, you have to respect the group rights. What is important is the issue of equity. Not condemning another person's right, another person featuring this. No, let everybody be included. We should have avoided all exclusiveness. So in short, my conclusion is that the functions given to the council should have been discussed and understood by the population before they start their work. And then once understood, then they proceed for knowledge-based consultation, and then thereafter, the opinionated one. And when we complete the exercise, the Gambian people will have been fully informed of the transition they want. Then it goes to the process of legislation. And there, of course, what I said before could have been done, but it was abandoned. Then I came to accompany them at the National Assembly and said, yes, to bring a constitution wholesale, both the entering and non-entering clauses, and said we review it and promulgate it was going to be difficult. As for 226. But then 102 of the Constitution says that the National Assembly has power to call for a referendum on any matter of national interest. Well, I don't want to go too deeply into that because this is where discussions to take in place to know how do we go about. Because if we do something as a nation, well, it's as a nation, who will go to the Supreme Court to challenge or do anything else? Well, it all depends. So, but these are issues we needed to crash out. But the issue did not take that trend. At the level of the National Assembly, when a bill is brought, first reading, there should be a second reading. And our standing order said the second reading should be followed by the committee stage. You refer the bill to a committee, and it could have been a committee of the whole House, to review the bill clause by clause. And this is where we could have frustrated to see what can we do to make sure that whatever we need to remove, we remove, whatever we need to add, we add. Well, it's the National Assembly. Later on, it can take other issues because the judiciary is supreme in the interpretation of the Constitution. Those matters could come later. But essentially, the National Assembly could have taken that process, and then we go to the third reading, and then the matter referred to a referendum by using 102 for a referendum. That could have been a process. I am not saying it's the right process. I'm saying it's a shortcut to a situation where we did not have, in Section 226, to have wholesale annulment of a constitution, revocation of a constitution, and then the actual adoption of a new one. So in short, what we need now, as my brother has said, if you look at the provisions, even the process now, we have a bill at the National Assembly on election, it's called election bill. If you look at clause 147, it is a replica of section 130 of the elections decree. And what that says is that if you wish to stand for election when you are working in an institution, you can seek leave and be granted leave for the period of the campaign and 5 days after, and you return to work, and you will be there with pay. But section 170 of the Constitution says that if you wish to stand for election, you must seek 1 year leave without pay. which nullified Section 130 of the decree, and at the same time we are trying to pass a bill which ultimately, even if we pass, we will not be able to implement because the constitutional provision will nullify that because according to Section 4, anything that goes against the Constitution becomes null and void. So what do we do now? Should we stop that whole process, focus on the Constitution, get it right, and start to deal with our electoral laws and ordinances, which I believe is the right process. I tried in the National Assembly because when you build, because we needed 3/4 majority in the second reading, 3/4 majority in the third reading. 3/4 majority we could not get in the second reading, that's why it was thrown out. Now, how do you revive it? If it is within a session, it is already in the standing orders that you can call for the revocation of your decision and come back. But that did not take place. When the executive showed interest, and that's where the executive should have started consultation internally, because somehow no one knows how it was derailed in the National Assembly. I will not make any accusation or allegation. But if the executive, as it showed interest there, really meant business, I believe this is where the executive should have started consultation at the National Assembly level to see what we could do to be able to revive the process. I tried to do it unilaterally, but that required parliamentary jurisprudence. Because what the standing order says is that if you want to make a motion, and you want to make a motion where there is no provision in the standing orders, then it is the speaker who must allow that motion to be made, and then make a decision, which is parliamentary jurisprudence. But I tried to revive it, but the speaker would not allow it. So that is to get rid of, because it says that once a decision is made, then unless it is rescinded, you cannot bring a motion again in Parliament. That's why if somebody said that the issue is there, well, we are wondering. Again, don't take my words as Bible and Quran. We are now in a conversation. But I'm going to be very much moved to follow the proceedings, to see how they can bring the whole thing back to Parliament without bringing a new thing. Because for me, there are, of course, processes. One process is for Parliament to rescind a decision that has already been made by another speaker. You may bring that back to that back door, or to turn the whole exercise, turn the Constitutional Review Commission into another committee, review committee, that will take on board all concerns, a new process, and then from there, prepare a new bill, publish it for 3 months, another 10 days, and bring a new constitutional draft. We don't call it draft, but a bill to the National Assembly. To conclude, moderator, the process was very clean of telling the Commission its functions, and then Section 21 gave us what the outcome should have been. And it says very clearly that the Commission must prepare a constitution and submit to the President and publish it. It says the Commission shall, upon the completion of its work, submit a constitution and a report thereon to the President. Well, when you say a constitution here, you're confused and say, hey, how can they submit a constitution? Who are they to make a constitution? But no, the Act is very clear of what that constitution means. It says in the interpretation, the constitution means the proposed new constitution of the Republic of the Gambia that the Commission is tasked on its act to draft. So that is what it did. It had to submit it to the President in its original form. That's the original. And the Commission shall, upon the submission of the draft constitution and report to the President, publish the constitution and the report, so that nobody intervenes with what they want. And everybody will know what they have done. And this, of course, is published in the Gazette, and in other areas. So in short, we had a very clean process, amputated at the wrong time. There were those doctors who felt that the immediate amputation. But eventually, that amputation led to death. So we are now told that we can raise the dead back to life. Yes, this is possible. It can be miraculous if we have a National Assembly and Speaker who is generous enough to breathe life to dead bodies. Thank you very much.
Plane. Hold on, plane. I come here, man. Hold on, plane. Anyway, at time,
If you want to receive monies from UK, Europe, USA, Canada, Switzerland, and the rest of the world, Supersonic's money transfer has got you covered. With the largest payout network in the Gambia, you can now receive your monies anywhere you are, from Kartong to Koina, with less hassle. Yes! You can receive monies from your family and friends in UK, Europe, USA, Canada, Switzerland, and the rest of the world with our safe, secure, fast, and convenient service that offers you the largest selection of payout locations in the Gambia. Supersonic's money transfer. We are currently in 34 African countries and counting, giving you quality money remittance services that are second to none. Visit the Google Play Store or the Apple Store today to download the Supersonics Money Transfer app and enjoy excellent money transfer services only with Supersonics.
Mbadingolu alla jahalo bantara fereng New Life Animal Farm natale andi be mobile jam febe jahalle ne be saji yo bondele damen walla basan damen to New Life Animal Farm natale kalu nyaala fita nde sajiol dila la mel yalan ko ni asamba ya sidi tilikilin tilifula aifa hanide sajiol be mbulle mel yalan ko i warta andum fanan ila jata kenda sabatita amanke banna selo dammati baratul fanan mel yalan ko albe lafirin ka furu sitole ke manyo bitolu anin kulliyolu nga sajiol sodole akendema ana betema New Life Animal Farm felenting ale jiboro koto al sefra no mol male aneni nombalto 7979495 wala 2032924 Atul fana melialan ko atul le diaspora al semol sudno anani number tole +120 696 32075 ali bornang alina alla banasal sajiol sang
nit ku baax dafa yombul boo ko amee danga koy kañ soo ko kañul kan ngay kañ te kañ ngay kañ góor ci juddu la ci deret lay daw te ci jikko lay feeñoo góor ci juddu la man daal de tippoo naa la man Abdou Guité Seck maa ngi seetaan Gambian Talent TV di wax suma soppe yépp nañ koy seetaan bu baax ndaxte yëf yi doy na waar saf na sàpp macha allah